November 22nd, 1963, 1:30 p.m., Central Standard Time, Graceland, Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis sits in the living room. White couch, gold records on the walls, sun streaming through the windows. The television is on, CBS. Walter Cronkite's voice fills the room. And then everything stops. The president has been shot. Dallas, Texas, Dealey Plaza, 12:30 p.m. Elvis doesn't move, doesn't speak, just stares at the screen. What happens in the next 18 minutes will reveal something about Elvis Presley that nobody saw coming. Something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Something that changed everything. Here is the story. The living room at Graceland is rarely quiet. But right now, it's silent. Elvis sits forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped, eyes locked on the television. Vernon Presley stands in the doorway, Elvis's father. He doesn't enter, just watches his son. Priscilla is upstairs. Lisa Marie is 8 months old, sleeping in the nursery. The house staff moves through the halls, slower than usual, whispers instead of conversation. Everyone knows something terrible has happened, but nobody knows how terrible. Not yet. On the screen, chaos. Reporters scrambling. Cameras shaking. Voices overlapping. Parkland Memorial Hospital. The president is in surgery. Elvis leans back, runs his hand through his hair, black hair slicked back. The way he's worn it since 1956. He looks different today. Not the performer, not the movie star, just a 28-year-old man watching history collapse. Vernon finally speaks. "Elvis, you all right?" Elvis doesn't answer. The television continues. Updates every few minutes, each one worse than the last. Vice President Johnson is safe. Governor Connolly is wounded. The president's condition is critical. Elvis stands, walks to the window, looks out at the gates of Graceland. Beyond the gates, Graceland Street. Beyond that, Memphis. Beyond that, America. An America that is about to change. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to change too. 1:38 p.m., Walter Cronkite removes his glasses. His voice cracks. From Dallas, Texas, the flash apparently official. President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. Elvis turns from the window. His face is pale, his jaw tight, his hands shake. Vernon steps into the room. "Son?" Elvis shakes his head. "They killed him, Daddy. They just killed the president." Priscilla comes down the stairs. She's been crying. She sits on the couch. Elvis doesn't sit. He paces. Living room to dining room to living room, over and over. The television plays footage. Jacqueline Kennedy, blood on her pink suit. The motorcade. The book depository. Elvis stops pacing, stares at the screen. He's never met John F. Kennedy. Never shook his hand. Never performed for him. But he feels something breaking inside. Not just grief. Something deeper. Quick thought. Have you ever felt the exact moment when your trust in the world shattered? Drop a comment. To understand what happens next, you need to understand who Elvis was in 1963. Not who the world thought he was, who he actually was. By November 1963, Elvis Presley has been famous for 7 years. Heartbreak Hotel, Ed Sullivan, The Pelvis. America fell in love with him. Then America got scared of him. Too sexual, too dangerous, too much. Then came 1958, the Army. Architected Elvis' narrative framework, balancing historical accuracy with investigative storytelling. Preciso continuar o roteiro seguindo todas as regras. Estou na seção de backstory agora. Preciso. Manter frases curtas. Tempo presente. Desenvolver a relação de Elvis com a América, com a presidência, com a ideia de servir ao país, criar loops sobre o que ele vai fazer, manter o tom investigativo e humano. Vou continuar desenvolvendo o backstory de Elvis em 1963, sua relação com a autoridade, com a América, e então revelar gradualmente sua reação ao assassinato de JFK 2 years in Germany. serving his country. Private Presley, serial number 576. When he came back in 1960, something had changed. Not his fame. That was still there, bigger than ever. But his image, gone was the rebel, the threat, the danger. In its place, the patriot, the good son, the all-American boy who served his country. Elvis embraced this. He needed to. Hollywood contracts, millions of dollars, movies instead of concerts, Blue Hawaii, girls, 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 fun in Acapulco, safe, sanitized, acceptable. But inside, Elvis was restless. He watched the world change around him. Kennedy versus Nixon. Elvis couldn't vote. Too busy filming. But he watched. Young president, Catholic, war hero, everything America wanted, everything America needed. Elvis saw himself in Kennedy. Not politically. Elvis didn't care about politics. But the image, the performance, the weight of being who everyone needed you to be. Kennedy had Camelot. Elvis had Graceland. Both were stages. Both were prisons. Kennedy spoke about a new frontier, space, civil rights, progress. Elvis made movies about beaches and girls. He felt the gap growing between who he was and who he could have been. November 1963. Elvis is at Graceland more than usual. Between films, restless, bored. He reads spiritual books, philosophy, self-improvement. He thinks about meaning, about purpose, about legacy. What will people remember? The music or the movies? The rebel or the sellout? And then November 22nd arrives, and everything changes. Now back to Graceland. 1:45 p.m. Elvis stops pacing. He turns to Vernon. I need to do something. What do you mean? I need to do something for the president, for Mrs. Kennedy. Something. Vernon doesn't understand. Son, there's nothing we can do. Elvis shakes his head. There's always something. He walks to the phone, black rotary, sits on a table by the stairs. He picks it up, dials. The phone rings. A voice answers. Colonel Parker's office. This is Elvis. I need to speak with the colonel. Hold, please. Tom Parker. The colonel. Elvis's manager since 1956. The man who made Elvis a star. The man who controlled every move. The phone clicks. The colonel's voice. Thick Dutch accent. Elvis, my boy. Terrible news. Colonel, I want to do something. A benefit. A concert. Something for the Kennedy family. Silence on the line. Then the colonel speaks. Slowly. Carefully. Elvis, now is not the time. The country is in mourning. That's exactly why... The colonel interrupts. You have a film to finish. Paradise. Hawaiian style. Remember? Elvis grips the phone tighter. This is more important than a movie. The colonel's voice hardens. Nothing is more important than your career. We don't get involved in politics. We don't take sides. I'm not taking sides. The president is dead. Exactly. And the president was a Democrat. Half your fans are Republicans. We stay neutral. We stay safe. Elvis is silent. The colonel continues. You want to help? Send flowers. Send a telegram. But no concerts. No statements. No press. Understand? Elvis understands. He's understood for 7 years. The colonel decides. Elvis performs. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Yes, sir. Good boy. I'll call you tomorrow. The line goes dead. Elvis hangs up. Priscilla watches him from the couch. What did he say? Elvis doesn't answer. He walks back to the window. Outside, reporters are gathering. Cameras, microphones, waiting for a statement. Waiting for Elvis Presley to say something about the president. But he won't. He can't. The colonel said no, and Elvis Presley doesn't disobey the colonel. Never has. 3:00 p.m. The television continues. Footage on loop, the motorcade, the shots, the hospital, the announcement. Elvis watches it all. Vernon sits in his chair, reading the newspaper, but not really reading, just holding it. Priscilla checks on Lisa Marie, then comes back down. The house is suspended. Time moves but doesn't move. Elvis finally speaks. I met a president once. Vernon looks up. What? Eisenhower, Germany, March 1959. He came to visit the troops, shook my hand, told me I was doing a good job. Vernon nods. I remember. Elvis continues. I wanted to ask him something, but I didn't. What did you want to ask? Elvis is quiet for a moment. Then, if he ever felt trapped. By the office. By the expectations. By everyone needing him to be something he wasn't. What stopped you? Elvis looks at his father. Fear. Fear of being disrespectful. Fear of being inappropriate. Fear of crossing a line. Vernon doesn't respond. Because he knows. He knows his son lives with that fear every day. Fear of stepping out of line. Fear of losing everything. 4:30 p.m. The phone rings. Elvis answers. Hello? A voice he recognizes. Red West, one of the Memphis Mafia, Elvis's childhood friend, now his bodyguard. Boss, you okay? I'm fine. You watching the news? Yeah. It's bad, boss. Real bad. I know. Red pauses. What are we gonna do? Nothing. Nothing? The colonel says we stay out of it. Red is silent. Then, that doesn't sound like you. Elvis's jaw tightens. Well, that's what we're doing. He hangs up, immediately regrets it, but doesn't call back. 6 p.m. Darkness falls on Graceland. The gates are closed. Security is doubled. Nobody in, nobody out. Inside, Elvis sits alone in his room. Upstairs, master bedroom, door closed. He doesn't eat dinner, doesn't come down, just sits, thinking about Kennedy, about himself, about America, about the moment when the shots rang out. 3 shots, 3 seconds, everything changed. Who has that power? Not Elvis. Elvis can't change anything, can't speak, can't act, can only perform. When told, how told, where told. The colonel's voice echoes in his mind. We don't get involved. We stay safe, safe, that word. Elvis has been safe for 3 years. Safe movies, safe music, safe image. And what has it given him? Money, fame, Graceland, but not respect. The Beatles are coming. Bob Dylan is writing protest songs. The world is changing, and Elvis Presley is making beach movies. He walks to his bathroom, looks in the mirror. 28 years old, still young, still handsome, but tired. Tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of being safe. He opens the medicine cabinet. Pills, prescribed, legal, necessary, for sleep, for energy, for anxiety. He takes 2, then closes the cabinet. Goes back to bed, November 23rd, 1963. 8:00 a.m. Elvis wakes. The television is still on downstairs. He can hear it. Coverage continues. Lee Harvey Oswald arrested. Jacqueline Kennedy planning the funeral. Elvis gets dressed. Black pants, white shirt, no jewelry. He goes downstairs. Vernon is in the kitchen. Coffee brewing. Morning, son. Morning. You sleep? No. Vernon pours 2 cups, hands one to Elvis. They drink in silence. Then Vernon speaks. The colonel called. When? This morning. Early. What did he say? He wants you to send a telegram to Mrs. Kennedy. Condolences. Nothing political. Elvis nods. Vernon continues. He also said no interviews, no statements. Business as usual. Business as usual. Elvis repeats the words. Like nothing happened. Like the president didn't die. Vernon doesn't respond. Because they both know. In Hollywood, business is always usual. No matter what. 10 a.m. Elvis sits at his desk, writing, not a telegram, a letter. Dear Mrs. Kennedy, I cannot imagine your pain. I did not know your husband, but I admired him. He gave us hope. Now that hope feels distant, but I believe. He stops, crosses out the last line, starts again. I believe America will endure because of people like him and people like you. With deepest sympathy, Elvis Presley. He folds the letter, puts it in an envelope, addresses it. Mrs. Jacqueline Kennedy, the White House, Washington, D.C. He seals it, then calls Vernon. "Can you mail this for me?" Vernon looks at the envelope. "Did the Colonel approve this?" Elvis meets his father's eyes. "I don't care." Vernon takes the envelope. Doesn't say another word. Just takes it. And later that day, it's mailed. The letter arrives at the White House on November 27th. It's never acknowledged publicly, but Jacqueline Kennedy receives it, reads it, and files it away. Among thousands of others, from dignitaries, world leaders, citizens, and one letter from Elvis Presley, who wrote what he felt, not what he was told to feel. For the first time in years. November 25th, 1963. The funeral. Elvis watches it on television. The entire nation watches. The caisson, the riderless horse, John Jr. saluting, St. Matthew's Cathedral, Arlington National Cemetery, eternal flame. Elvis watches it all, and something inside him breaks. Not dramatically, not obviously, but quietly. A small crack, in the performance, in the facade, in the belief that staying safe was enough. December 1963. Elvis returns to Hollywood. Paradise, Hawaiian style, resumes filming. He sings, he dances, he smiles for the cameras. But something is different. The crew notices. The Colonel notices. Elvis is distant, going through the motions, but not present, not really. Between takes, he sits alone, reads newspapers about the assassination, the investigation, the theories. He becomes obsessed, not publicly, privately. Who killed Kennedy? Why? How could this happen? He reads everything, Warren Commission reports, conspiracy theories, eyewitness accounts, looking for answers, but finding only questions. January 1964. The Beatles arrive in America. Elvis watches them on Ed Sullivan, the same show that made him famous. 73 million viewers, the same number that watched him. Maybe more. Young, fresh, dangerous. Everything Elvis used to be. He feels it slipping. His moment, his era. He's 29, and already he's yesterday's news. February 1964. The Colonel presents a new contract. 3 more movies. Same formula. Sing, romance, comedy, safe. Elvis signs. What choice does he have? But that night, he can't sleep. He thinks about Kennedy. About that letter he wrote. The one where he said what he felt, not what he was supposed to feel. It was small, meaningless, but it was real. And for a moment, Elvis was real too. Not the image, not the product. Just a man. Who cared? Who felt? Who thought the president's death meant something? He realizes something. Kennedy's death didn't just change America. It changed him. Not all at once, but slowly. Like water wearing down stone, it planted a question. What if Elvis Presley could be more than safe? What if he could be real again? March 1968, 4.5 years after Kennedy's death. Elvis stands in a television studio, NBC, Burbank, California. The '68 comeback special. It's called a Christmas special. But it's not about Christmas. It's about Elvis. Real Elvis. Black leather, no scripts, just music. He sits in the round, small audience, intimate, guitar in his hands, and he performs. Not like the movies. Not like the Colonel wants. Like himself, raw, dangerous, alive. For the first time since 1960, since before the Army, before Hollywood, before Safe, the camera captures it, the sweat, the intensity, the truth, and America sees it, 42% of the viewing audience. Elvis Presley is back. Not the beach movie star, the rebel, the king, the person he was before he learned to be safe. After the special airs, Elvis sits in his dressing room, alone. He thinks about Kennedy. About that day in November. About the letter he wrote, the one small act of defiance. It didn't save Kennedy, didn't change history. But it changed Elvis. It reminded him that he had a voice, and maybe, just maybe, he could use it. Not just for movies, not just for money, but for something real. Elvis returns to live performances. Las Vegas, International Hotel, opening night July 31st. He's terrified. 9 years since his last concert. What if they don't care anymore? What if he's forgotten? But when he walks on stage, black jumpsuit, red scarf, the crowd erupts, 2,200 people, screaming, crying, reaching, and Elvis remembers. This is who he is, not the movie star, the performer, the connection, human to human, real. August 1969, after a Vegas show, a reporter asks him, "Elvis, what brought you back?" Elvis thinks. He could say the money, the colonel, the career, but he doesn't. He says, "I got tired of singing to the camera. I needed to sing to people again." The reporter writes it down, doesn't understand, but Elvis does. November 22nd, 1969. 6 years since Kennedy died. Elvis is in his suite. International Hotel, Las Vegas. He watches the news. Anniversary coverage, Dealey Plaza, Parkland Hospital, the funeral, all of it again. He thinks about that day in Graceland, the phone call to the colonel, the letter to Mrs. Kennedy, the moment he realized he had a choice, stay safe or be real. It took him 4 years, but he chose. Elvis meets President Nixon, December 21st, the White House, Oval Office. He asks for the meeting, flies to Washington, writes a letter on American Airlines stationery, delivers it to the gate. The president will see him. They meet. 2 men, 2 performers, 2 people trapped by image. Elvis asks to be a federal agent at large for the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. It's absurd. But Nixon agrees, gives him a badge. Elvis leaves the White House, badge in hand, feeling like maybe, for once, he did something that mattered, something beyond the performance, not for the colonel, not for the movies, for himself. Aloha from Hawaii, January 14th, the first satellite concert, broadcast live to 40 countries, over 1 billion viewers, the biggest audience in television history. Elvis stands on stage, white jumpsuit, eagle design, American flag. He sings My Way, Suspicious Minds, an American trilogy, and in that moment, performing for the world, not in a movie, not on a soundstage, but live, real, connected. He thinks about Kennedy again, the new frontier, space, progress, reaching beyond. Elvis is reaching too. Not to the moon, but to people. 1 billion of them, seeing him, not the image, him. Elvis is dying. He doesn't know it, but his body does. Graceland, June 26th. His last concert, Market Square Arena, Indianapolis, Indiana. He can barely walk. Overweight, exhausted, medicated. But he performs, because that's what he does. 2 months later, August 16th. He's gone, 42 years old. The world mourns. Presidents release statements. Carter. Elvis Presley's death deprives our country of a part of itself. The same words used for Kennedy, for King, for leaders, for people who changed America. And maybe Elvis did. Not through politics, not through policy, but through performance, through connection, through being real, even when it was hard, even when the colonel said no, even when staying safe was easier. 60 years after Kennedy died. Graceland still stands. Over 600,000 visitors each year. They come to see where Elvis lived, but also where he learned. Learned that being safe isn't enough, that image isn't everything, that sometimes you have to choose. Performance or truth, safety or risk. Elvis chose both. But after November 22nd, 1963, after watching a president die, after writing that letter, he chose truth a little more often, not always, but enough. Enough to come back in 68, enough to return to the stage in 69, enough to meet Nixon in 70. enough to broadcast to the world in '73. The letter to Jacqueline Kennedy was never published, never acknowledged, never seen. But it exists in the Kennedy Presidential Library, filed away among thousands. One letter from Elvis Presley, who watched a president die and realized performance isn't enough. You have to be real, even for a moment, even in a letter, even when nobody's watching, because that's when it matters most. Quick thought, what would you risk to be truly yourself? Drop a comment. November 22nd, 1963 didn't just kill a president, it killed something in America. The innocence, the belief that good men couldn't be destroyed, that hope was enough, that the future was certain. It killed something in Elvis, too. The belief that staying safe was the same as staying alive. That performance was the same as truth, that he could hide forever. Behind the movies, behind the Colonel, behind the gates of Graceland. But he couldn't. Kennedy proved that. Death comes for everyone, presidents, kings, and when it does. What's left, the image or the truth? Elvis spent the rest of his life trying to answer that. Sometimes he chose image, the jumpsuits, the spectacle, the legend. Sometimes he chose truth, the '68 special, the letter, the moments alone, when he was just Elvis, not the king, just a man, who watched another man die and learned that life is short, that safety is an illusion, that the only thing that matters is being real, even if it's scary, even if it's risky, even if the Colonel says no. When Kennedy died, Elvis was in Graceland, safe, protected, hidden. What he did next was write a letter, one letter, to a widow, from a man who understood what it meant to lose, not a husband, but a future, a version of yourself you thought was guaranteed. That letter changed nothing and everything. It didn't bring Kennedy back, didn't stop the conspiracy theories, didn't heal America, but it cracked something in Elvis, the performance, the facade, the safety, and through that crack, the real Elvis began to emerge, not all at once, slowly, over 14 years, until August 16, 1977, when the performance ended, and all that was left was the truth. A man who tried to be more than his image, to be more than safe, to be real, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. November 22, 1963 changed America. It changed Elvis, too. Not because of what he did publicly, but because of what he did privately. He wrote a letter. He felt something. He cared. And for the rest of his life, he tried to remember that caring matters, that feeling matters, that being real, even for a moment, even in a letter nobody sees, matters most of all. And unfortunately, they don't make men like Elvis Presley anymore.